Okay, how's it going, everybody? We're going to read some Lenin, some more Lenin. This is Capitalism in the Press. It was published in 1914. Let's go ahead and get into this. When thieves fall out, honest men come by their own to some extent. When bourgeois newspapermen quarrel, they reveal to the public the venality of, quote, the big dailies, end quote, and the tricks they are up to. In Snesarev and the Navoya Vremya quarreled with that newspaper, misappropriated some of its funds, and was dismissed after a scandal. He has now published a, quote, book of 135 pages entitled The Mirage of Navoya Vremya. As good as a novel. St. Petersburg, 1914. Posing as is the custom as a perfect gentleman, Mr. Snesarev describes the ethics which have long established themselves in the capitalist countries of the West, and which are penetrating more and more into the bourgeois press in Russia, where, of course, the soil is exceptionally favorable for the most sordid and disgusting forms of bribery, toadyism, etc., which are practiced with impunity. Quote, everybody has gradually become accustomed to live beyond his means, end quote. This Navoya Vremya man writes with a charming air of injured innocence. Quote, when and how society will rid itself of this phenomena, or whether it will rid itself of it at all. Nobody can tell, but that such is the situation at the present time is a recognized fact, end quote. And one of the magic means by which one can live above one's income is to get bourgeois newspapers to participate in promoting concessions. Quote, I could mention scores of different concessions, end quote, relates our Navoya Vremyaist, quote, which owe their existence not only to certain connections, but also to certain articles published in certain newspapers. Navoya Vremya is, of course, no exception, end quote. For example, one day a representative of the London Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company called on Mr. Snesarev and invited him to draft the articles of association of a Russian Marconi company and a plan for a concession for that company. Quote, the remuneration for this work was fixed at 10,000 rubles, and an agreement was reached, end quote. The victimized Snesarev relates that not only did he sell himself to the capitalists for the sum, but that the whole newspaper, Navoya Vremya, sold itself to conduct a campaign in favor of the concession, for which it received a 50% rebate on telegrams, a cushy job as a founder of the company, and a grant of 50,000 rubles worth of shares. London capitalists fleecing the Russians, concessions from the Russian government, press participation, wholesale corruption, anybody and everybody bought and sold for thousands of rubles. Such is the truthful picture revealed by the disgruntled crook Snesarev. Navoya Vremya, an enterprise with millions invested in it, was collapsing. The pampered sons of the renegade millionaire A.S. Suvorin were squandering and dissipating millions. This noble newspaper had to be saved. P.L. Bark, managing director of the Volga Kama Bank, appeared on the scene, end quote, page 85. He persuaded A.S. Suvorin to transfer the business to a company whose articles of association had received His Majesty's approval in August 1911. Of the 800 shares at 5,000 rubles per share, 650 went to A.S. Suvorin. And forming the company, they drew up a fictitious balance sheet. Mr. Snesarev explains, page 97, adding that such a balance sheet could have been accepted either by people totally ignorant of figures or by people like Mr. Gukov. That is to say, people who know their business perfectly but pursue aims of their own, end quote. The heroes of this company's inauguration. The inaugural meeting was held on November 10, 1911, where Snesarev himself, P.L. Bark, V.P. Buranin, Octoberist member of the Duma Shubinsky, and the sons of that noble renegade, A.S. Suvorin, and others. As the reader sees, this highly respectable company has been operating with great zeal since November 1911. But since 1912, the victimized, Snesarev informs us, Navoya Vremya has been receiving a subsidy in the shape of the advertisements of the land banks. Not a very great income, a mere 15,000 rubles per annum, or something round about that figure. That's all in quotation marks. According to the law, these advertisements had to be given to the newspaper with the largest circulation. At that time, Navoya Vremya did not have the largest circulation, but it, quote, set in motion for the first time, the noble Snesarev avows. its backstairs influence and connections in government circles in order to retain these land-back advertisements. Quote, the matter was discussed by the Council of Ministers, and after rather serious hesitation, it was decided to allow Navoya Vremya to retain the advertisements, end quote. A literary and art societies club, quote, in plain words, a gambling house, end quote, was formed, quote, in the club's debt book. The members of the staff of Navoya Vremya had thousands of rubles against their accounts. These debts were simply written off, end quote. In cooperation with Menshikov and others, the stockbroker Manus, who grew rich on the stock exchange and piled up a fortune of several millions, page 120, launched a campaign in Navoya Vremya, demanding Kolkostov's resignation from the cabinet. We leave it to our readers to figure out how many thousands each of these public servants received and how much they have yet coming to them. A whirligig of millions began. Navoya Vremya, with a balance of 5 millions, of which 3 millions are fictitious salaries and fees of 2 and 3,000 rubles per month, the second-rate and third-rate members of the staff. Hundreds of thousands and millions wasted. Loans from banks amounting to hundreds of thousands. Universal corruption. Prostitution in all its forms, illegal and legal. Sanctified by marriage. The cream of high St. Petersburg society. Millionaires, cabinet ministers, stockbrokers, and distinguished foreigners. Gambling houses, blackmail in different forms, no political conventions, end quote. Envying intrigues, Amfiatrov and Snesarev challenging an engineer to a duel for insulting the editors of Navoya Vremya, who had slung mud at the students. A sovereign, who was very fond of Amfiatrov, but, quote, could not deny himself the pleasure of annoying him, end quote, by letting through an article by Burin containing a, quote, nasty dig at the actress, Raiskaya, Amfiatrov's wife. Burin then kicks Amfiatrov out. Sovereign's scapegrace sons run up debts amounting to hundreds of thousands of rubles. Navoya Vremya's loss in 1905, 150,000 rubles. Scared by 1905, Moscow merchants and manufacturers gave 100,000 rubles to found a patriotic newspaper for workers. At their request, Navoya Vremya undertook to arrange the matter. The newspaper dragged out miserable existence. The newspaper, quote, dragged out a miserable existence, end quote, for 2 years and then closed down. Muscovites lost 100,000 rubles and the Navoya Vremya people 150,000 rubles. Thieves, male prostitutes, venal writers, venal newspapers, such as our, quote, big press, end quote. Such is the flower of our high society. Everybody knows these people. They have connections, quote, everywhere. The brazen insolence of feudalists embracing in the dark with the brazen corruption of the bourgeoisie. Such is Holy Russia. Okay, yeah, so that's Capitalism in the Press by Lenin, 1914. So, thank y'all for tuning in. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, Medium. All of these are Marxist. Y'all follow me there. And hit me up, too. Y'all feel free to reach out to me. Y'all have a great day, and Dada Govi.